The Outermost House, A Year of Life on the Great Beach of Cape Cod by Henry Beston. Chapter 1, The Beach. Section 2. The cliff I write off and the bordering beach face the Atlantic on the forearm of the cape. This outer earth is now scarce more than a great dike or wall some 25 miles long and only 3 or 4 miles wide. At Provincetown, it rises from the sea, beginning there in a desert of dunes and sand plains of the ocean's making. These sands curve inland toward the continent, bending toward Plymouth, even as a hand may be bent down at the wrist, and Provincetown harbor lies in the curve of palm and fingers. At Truro, the wrist of the cape, the forearm simile being both exact and inescapable, the land curve falls from the east and the west down through an arc to the north and south, and the earth cliff begins and rises rather suddenly to its greatest elevation. South by east from the Highland Light to Eastham and Norset Coast Guard Station, the rampart fronts the sea, its skyline being now a progress of long undulations, now a level as military as a battlement, hollows and mounded hills here and there revealing the barren moorland character of the country just above. At Norset, the cliff ends, the sea invades the narrowing land, and one enters the kingdom of the dunes. The cliff ends, and a wall of ocean dunes carries on the beach. 5 miles long, this wall ends at a channel over whose entrance shoals the ocean sweeps daily into a great inlet or lagoon back of the dunes, an inlet spaced with the floors of tidal islands and traced with winding creeks, the inlet of Eastham and Orleans. Very high tides, covering the islands, sometimes turn this space into bay. Westward, over the channels and the marshland, one looks to the uplands of the Cape. Here, scarce a good 2 miles wide. At Eastham, the land is an open, rolling moor. West over this lies Cape Cod Bay, a powerful tribe of Indians, the Norsets, once inhabited this earth between the seas. Outermost cliff and solitary dune, the plain of ocean and the far bright rims of the world, meadowland and marsh and Asian moor, this is Eastham, this the outer cape. Sun and moon rise here from the sea. The arched sky has an ocean vastness. The clouds are now of ocean, now of earth. Having known and loved this land for many years, it came about that I found myself free to visit there, and so I built myself a house upon the beach. My house stood by itself atop a dune, a little less than halfway south on Eastham Bar. I drew the homemade plans for it myself, and it was built for me by a neighbor and his carpenters. When I began to build, I had no notion whatever of using the house as a dwelling place. I simply wanted a place to come to in the summer, one cozy enough to be visited in winter could I manage to get down. I called it the Full Castle. It consisted of 2 rooms, a bedroom and a kitchen living room, and its dimensions overall were but 20 by 16. A brick fireplace with its back to the wall between rooms heated the larger space and took the chill off the bedroom, and I used a 2-burner oil stove when cooking. My neighbor built well. The house, even as I hoped, proved compact and strong, and it was easy to run and easy to heat. The larger room was sheathed, and I painted the wainscoting and the window frames a kind of buff fawn, a good forecastle color. The house showed perhaps a somewhat amateur enthusiasm for windows. I had 10. In my larger room, I had 7. A pair to the east opening on the sea, a pair to the west commanding the marshes, a pair to the south, and a small look-see in the door. 7 windows in one room perched on a hill of sand under an ocean sun. The words suggest cross-lights and a glare, a fair misgiving, and one I countered by the use of wooden shutters originally meant for winter service but found necessary through the year. By arranging these, I found I could have either the most sheltered and darkened of rooms, or something rather like an inside out of doors. In my bedroom, I had 3 windows, one east, one west, and one north to Nauset light. To get drinking water, I drove a well pipe directly down into the dune. Though the sea and the beach are alongside, and the marsh channels course daily to the west, there is fresh water here under the salty sand. This water varies in quality, some of it being brackish, some of it sweet and clear. To my great delight, I chanced upon a source which seems to me as good water as one may find here anywhere. Beneath the floor, the pipe descended into a bricked up and covered pit housing a petcock through which I drained the water from the pump in freezing weather. On bitter days, I simply pumped a few pails full and stood them in the sink and drained the pump immediately. I had 2 oil lamps and various bottle candlesticks to read by, and a fireplace crammed more full of driftwood to keep me warm. I have no doubt that the fireplace heating arrangement sounds demented, but it worked, and my fire was more than a source of heat. It was an elemental presence, a household gold, and a friend. In my larger room, I had a chest of drawers painted an honest carriage blue, a table, a wall bookcase, a couch, 2 chairs, and a rocker. My kitchen, built yacht fashion or in a line, stood at my southern wall. First came a dish and crockery cupboard, then a space for the oil stove. I kept this boxed in when not in use. Then a shelf, a porcelain sink, and the corner pump. Blessed pump, it never failed me or indulged in nerves. Using a knapsack, I carried my supplies on my own shoulders. There is no road through the dunes, and even if there were, no one would have made deliveries. West of the dunes, it is true, there exists a kind of trail on which Fords may venture, but even the most experienced of the villagers are wary of it, and telling of being mired there or stuck in the sand. Nevertheless, my lumber came by this trail, and now and then I could get my oil cans carried down by a neighbor who had a horse and cart. These helps, however, were but occasional, and I counted myself fortunate to have had them at all. My knapsack remained the only ever-ready wagon of the dunes. Twice a week, by arrangement, a friend met me at Nauset Station with a car, took me shopping to Eastham or Orleans, and brought me back again to Nauset. And there I would pack my milk and eggs and butter and rolls, being very careful as to which was sitting on which, and strike off down the beach along the breakers. The top of the mound I built on stands scarce 20 feet above high water mark, and only 30 in from the great beach. The coast guards at Norset, a scant 2 miles away, were my only neighbors. South lay the farther dunes and a few far away and lonely gunning camps. The floor of marsh and tide parted me on the west from the village and its distant cottages. The ocean besieged my door. North, and north alone, had I touch with human things. On its solitary dune, my house faced the four walls of the world. My house completed, and tried and not found wanting by a first Cape Cod year. I went there to spend a fortnight in September. The fortnight ending, I lingered on, and as the year lengthened into autumn, the beauty and mystery of this earth and outer sea so possessed and held me that I could not go. The world today is sick to its thin blood for lack of elemental things, for fire before the hands, for water welling from the earth, for air, for the dear earth itself underfoot. In my world of beach and dune, these elemental presences lived and had their being, and under their arc there moved an incomparable pageant of nature and the year. The flux and reflux of ocean, the incomings of waves, the gatherings of birds, the pilgrimages of the peoples of the sea, winter and storm, the splendor of autumn, and the holiness of spring. All these were part of the great beach. The longer I stayed, the more eager was I to know this coast and to share its mysterious and elemental life. I found myself free to do so. I had no fear of being alone. I had something of a field naturalist inclination. Presently, I made up my mind to remain and try living for a year on East Ham Beach.